Hey there, today I'm going to be making these apple turnovers using Puff Pastry straight from the freezer. For more information, head over to my blog, Crafty Epicurean, where you'll find the recipe and some tips and tricks on how to make these. So the first step is to peel and dice 2 apples. Today I'm using Granny Smith apples. In the past I've used lemonade apples, which you can see in my baking from when I made my apple and blackberry slump, which I'll link to in the top right hand corner. So I like to basically cut my apple in half and then cut it 3 times again, and then core the apple and then dice it. So the dice is about a centimetre dice, but bigger, slightly smaller, doesn't really matter, but yeah, you don't want them too big because otherwise they won't fit in the turnovers very well. So just showing you how I like to dice my apples, and then I'm going to bring over some apples I diced earlier. As you can see, because I've left them out to the side, they have gone brown. If you don't like them turning brown like that and you have to prepare them in advance, just add a little bit of lemon juice and mix that through, and it'll stop the oxidization process, browning the apples. Here's the flaky puff pastry I like to use. So it comes in the freezer section of the supermarket and it's already ready rolled. So this is just straight out of the freezer, so it's still frozen. So I'm just going to take out 3 sheets to thaw out for use in these apple turnovers. So this is a very simple recipe that uses ready rolled flaky pastry straight out of the freezer. So I'm taking out each sheet as well as its plastic dividing sheet. Now I've placed the pot of apples on a medium-low heat on the stove, and I'm adding half a cup of sultanas. You can add more or less, or other dried fruit if you like. I'm also going to add half a teaspoon of cinnamon because, well, apples and cinnamon go really well together, and this is what my mum used to always put in her mixture. So you want to stir that through, still on a medium-low heat. Stir it constantly or regularly until it starts to steam, as you can see here. And now we're going to add a corn flour slurry. So this is about a teaspoon of corn flour mixed with cold water. So I've used about 6 tablespoons of water here, and you want to make sure it is cold water, otherwise it will go lumpy. So just pour it into the apple mixture and then stir regularly over that medium-low heat until it starts to steam again and that corn flour slurry has coated the mixture. Then set that aside to cool while we prepare the pastry. So I'm just putting 2 sheets of my pastry to the side. As you can see, it is now pliable, it's now thawed out. My apple mixture has also now cooled slightly and is ready to place into the pastry. So for the pastry itself, I just fold it in half and then rotate it 90 degrees and fold it in half again. And this gives me 4 equal squares of pastry for my apple turnovers. To cut the pastry, I just use a simple butter knife and cut along those creases that I made using those folds. So I'm now going to get a teaspoon, because I'm going to use that to place the filling inside my pastry. So I'm just going to grab 1 piece. I like to use what I call the face side down, which is the side of the pastry that is attached to the plastic. I like to put the filling on that side because I feel it's a bit stickier. So I'm putting about 2.5 teaspoons of filling here. Now you can see the steam coming off the filling, so it is cold, but it's not piping hot. So it's just sort of slightly hotter than warm, I should say. But it's not going to burn too much heat, and it will start cooking the pastry and make it go soggy, so we don't want that. Now, after you've added your filling, just press the pastry together. And then this is the pleat that my mum taught me to do, but it's basically just using your thumb and your forefinger to pinch the pastry together, and it just gives a nice little crimped edge. What you also want to make sure with the filling is that you don't get any filling on the edge where it gets crimped, because it will stop the pastry sticking to itself. Other options for crimping this is you could use a fork. Now I've just gone to grab a fork here because I'm just going to poke a few holes in the top, just like any pie that you make, to release the air as it cooks, so it doesn't explode. So it releases the air in a predictable place rather than out the side and creating a disaster. Now I've just sped that up and shown you how I finish off the rest of that sheet of pastry and make these apple turnovers. So I'm just going to repeat that with the other 2 sheets of pastry, just folding it over, crimping the edges, filling it up, etc. You also want to make sure you don't overfill these apple turnovers because they will split open. I've got a baking tray now with some non-stick baking paper. I've also preheated the oven to 180 degrees Celsius, and I am now going to add my apple turnovers onto the baking sheet. Onto this baking sheet I can usually get all 12 of my apple turnovers. I just have to arrange them. They won't really rise and into each other and stick that much, so they can be placed quite close together. So anyway, from 12 to 15 minutes later, here are the apple turnovers. So you want to leave them to cool for about 10 minutes before dusting them with icing sugar. So I said 12 to 15 minutes that they're in the oven for, or until they are a nice light brown colour, as you saw here. And that's how I made these apple turnovers. For more information, head over to my blog, craftyepicurean.com, and thank you for watching.